principles operating in the world today that are very seductive, and your in-between state, name them. Power, glamour, money, or power, prestige and money. They're to go towards the unconscious with those in mind. We have no idea what we're releasing in response to that. Well, we do have an idea, it's not conscious. What's happening is the world we've created. We're going into the unconscious with the will to power. Just I can use this, I can use that, I can use that. You know, and what's missing is any sense that I may be dealing with an intelligence that don't know have no idea what it thinks of us or me, and what its intentions are, and what it may be appropriating me for. You know, one has to get taught these things from the unconscious, and I think that's just the dreams to have, to do that, to take it on board seriously, you know, so one can develop other attitudes. You know, it's the power, prestige and money that has us in its grip. So we approach everything that way, and collectively, and so we approach the unconscious that way. And these dreams are very, very nicely positioned to open you up to something else in your own approach. We tinkered. You saw the movie about Oppenheimer and the bomb, you know, and the general said to him, "What are the chances of the whole atmosphere becoming a conflagration?" And Oppenheimer said, "Our calculations are that it's near zero." So they went ahead. That's what we're doing. It was above zero, but we went ahead in the interest of power. Can you imagine? We're willing to risk
everything,
a global conflict for the sake of power. And Oppenheimer had some huge reactions to what he had done afterwards. And I really like that scene where President Truman basically said, "I'll get this guy out of here." You know, he's developed a conscience. Too late, my friend. And he's right. The genie's escaped the bottle. What are you doing whining about it? In that sense, I agreed with Truman, although I found his attitude deplorable. Yeah, but the fact was, yeah, the genie's out. I'm gonna use it as best I can, not realizing that he's working with the genie. Yeah, just one last thing. Since I brought up the genie in the bottle's a great example of working with an intelligence and you don't understand it. So the genie comes out and he says, "Thank you for releasing me. I'll give you 3 wishes." And so people ask for the 3 wishes, but they don't realize they're working with an intelligence. So they get exactly what they asked for. And it turns out to be a horror show, because he gives them exactly what they wanted. And it's a disaster. They weren't conscious of what they were asking. They weren't conscious of what's implicit in language, in the asking. And the genie just plays off that. So that's a very important teaching from the psyche to you. I think about that, all of that.
I mean, we've touched on so many things. So if the psyche, this or the objective psyche, is its own being or its own. I almost don't want to say thing, because that would be you're positivizing it, and it's the objective psyche is the objective psyche, and we're somewhat a part of it, but it's got its own.
It's got its own being. I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay, yes.
Some would call it being.
Being, yeah. So it's got its own intentions, so to say,
or its nature.
Or nature.
Yeah, they're congruent words.
I guess where I'm going is, of course, the individual. There's a certain humbling we must do, and where am I going with this? It's just last time you talked about that interiority is sort of is gone, but this could be a move by the soul itself, to sort of where we've sort of turned our back on soul in waking life, in society and culture.
Right.
And we've talked about the end of the world. I guess I'm trying to say, like, where does this presumably you would say from your books that, I mean, even with the title of being a mouthpiece, there is a role for the individual to bring forth whatever it is that soul or the objective psyche is trying to bring forth.
That's a very, very important detail, yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your experiences. I mean, I'm trying to bring, so there's this on the one hand, we've got the will to power, and it's wanting to sacrifice. We've talked about the will to power coming in, wanting to sacrifice itself to bring forth love. We've got, I mean, there's a lot going on. I was just wondering if you could somehow talk more and link it all together. I'm sorry for babbling on, but it's
Right.
It's all up in the cloud for me at the moment, as I mentioned.
So maybe your question could be, one angle to your question could be, how do you get, what sort of experience do you need to introduce the conviction that one's moral stance vis-a-vis the objective psyche is a crucial element in what comes forward into actuality through one, making the individual indispensable, and the condition of the moral being, you might say, indispensable. Does that make sense? Like we're not. That's the role of the mouthpiece. We can't. If you just go in and just pull out whatever you need, the moral attitude is what helps bring forth horror, disaster.
Well, I mean, even just going back to the dreams we started off with, there's this kind of, like as you said, the individual can have its own wants and needs from this interaction with psyche.
Yeah.
How do you go about sort of distinguishing and allowing this sort of unknown future, or this teaching from the unconscious to work through you, but without, I suppose, as you said, like without the moral question, without sort of.
Well, the question in a way answers itself if you accept that the objective psyche is an intelligence, its being, and has its own reality, its own nature, and we're in a participation with its movements, and the degree of unconsciousness we have has a lot to do with what actually comes forth through us, through cultural forms and so on, that comes through us, originating in the psyche and coming through us in some art form or cultural form. Well, it answers itself. We've got a horror show appearing. The world is becoming more and more anti-human, and we don't seem to care. So that's we're not the originators of the forms of technological civilization. We're the unconscious mouthpieces of it. We think we get an idea, but where does the idea come from? You know, we're not, ideas are not self-originating in us, in our subjective mind. They come to us, and because we're unconscious of the reality of ideas, or reality of thinking, or the reality of images in themselves, we identify with them, and we believe that we're thinking them up, or what a great idea this is, you know, so let's do it. The only reason we're doing it is because I have the idea to do it, and it's exciting. So that is a total, we're paying the price of that, because that's a total unconsciousness in the face of the source of thinking and ideas and images being in the psyche. We think we are the source of all those things, and so we can do anything we want. That's a moral attitude of power and control, basically. I'm the sole agent of my life, and I can do, and we are. The things we're doing now, I've just read in the paper yesterday that we've solved the recycling problem with plastics. We're just going to shoot them up into space. You know, we don't stop. We don't stop with that idea, that prejudice that we can have a technological solution to what technology has caused. We just are not stopping that. So there's a real problem in our moral attitude, and so that can get sorted out with a human being who wants to enter into a relationship with the objective psyche and is willing to undergo the teachings. And they can be pretty devastating. But if one can go through it, one's moral attitude begins to change and shift. You know, so these dreams are a beautiful example of that. You know, if you really get there's another intelligence there, fear should come into play, because we've been taught in our technological civilization that each person is a isolated subject, and anything that happens, anything that goes on in their lives is a result of the subject's thinking, the subject's acting, the subject's ideas, and that's a pretty isolated place. But it doesn't. So when that isolated subject encounters another being, it's terrified, absolutely terrified. And this is easily visible. You just have to look up a YouTube video of a couple who decide to show what happened when a spider came into the room, or if a cockroach or a mouse starts jumping about, and they film it. The terror is staggering, especially in the USA. It's staggering. That's absolute terror in the face of another little being that's not subject to your will. We're faced with terror. I saw this extraordinary documentary or report of US soldiers. These were hardened Marines in the desert of Iraq, and they had their tents up. And it was nighttime, they had mosquito nets down. They decided to show the television crew what's on the other side of the mosquito screen. And there were these creatures. But the soldiers were terrified. They were terrified. They did their best to spray them. They were on the other side of the net, couldn't possibly do any harm, but they got out the mortine and killed them. James Hillman refers to this in his essay called "Going Bugs." You know, he's a great Jungian analyst and lecturer, world-renowned speaker, and he called it "Going Bugs" because America is terrified of bugs. Now it's an image, or it's a manifestation of our terror of the objective psyche. We cannot have anything with its own intelligence, its own nature, interacting with us where we're not in control. So we're going towards the mystery of with a will to control it. That's what we're doing. And what's manifesting is the world we see as a result of that. So an encounter with the unconscious, such as what you had in your dreams, can actually start to straighten that out a little bit, you know, if one gets it.
Well, yeah, because I want to.
I'm not the only actor in this drama. You know, these other images, whatever they are, they're not doing what I'm telling them. I'm kind of just one image amongst them, just to get that little fact. But we don't. To do that, we have to accept the reality of them. They have reality of images. They have their own ontology, their own way of being, and they're teaching us. They're teaching us that every night, when we're surprised by what happened in our dreams, or shocked, or terrified, or sexually aroused, we're encountering others, images, but we seem to be unable to say that's real. That's the problem. When we wake up, instead of being, if only that shaking and that effect would stray into the waking life, you start to think, you know, well, am I the boss of me? We're not, and we're taught that every night. Except when we wake up, we close the door. That's our crisis. We shut the door on what's shouting at us. You know, you're not the only reality in town. Meanwhile, we're looking for aliens, God knows where, out in space, not finding anything. But every night we're encountering them. You know, the earliest psychiatrists, what they were called, the alienists.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because they dealt with what was alien to the ego, but they were getting how real it was, and we've really shut the door on that now. So it's truly a crisis. The Surrealists were an art movement that celebrated this otherness. You know, they couldn't wait to get into that hypnagogic state. They practiced the discipline of getting into the hypnagogic state and getting its wealth of imagery, and then you get these surrealistic paintings, which are a celebration of the imagination. It's really a wonderful movement, and it sort of broke open. As far as modern art goes, it broke open modern art. So modern art said, why should we represent the given world? Let's start representing the mind stuff. You know? Haven't looked back, really.
Certainly, fear is one response, and it's I've definitely felt that myself. But there's also a sense of like, wow, awe, wonder. Like this is amazing.
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah. Curiosity is there's idle curiosity. When I'm talking about that. The curiosity, though, is the kind of curiosity that Alice had in Alice in Wonderland. She granted each of those beings in Wonderland the fullness of their being and their reality, and she was willing to be taught by every creature, every dream, every image that she met. She was willing to be taught and engage them. She was a very lovely little girl who didn't have pretensions at all. So if she saw a caterpillar smoking from a hookah, she'd engage it. Or she saw an egg on top of a wall, you know, what are you doing there? She'd engage it. So that's the right attitude. That's it. She had it in spades. She went, and that was curious. She was curious, a curious little girl, but curious in the right way. You know, what's this unknown approaching me? You know, this cat that can disappear with a smile, and that would be an appropriate attitude to have for the unconscious psyche.